Title: Stop Burning $100 on AvGas. Do this instead. There's a moment almost every airplane owner eventually experiences. You land after a beautiful flight, taxi over to the fuel pump, swipe your card, and then you look at the total. Sometimes it's $80, sometimes it's $120, sometimes it's much more. And suddenly you realize something uncomfortable. The biggest cost of flying isn't the airplane, it's the fuel. AvGas has quietly become one of the most expensive parts of general aviation. And for many pilots, especially those flying regularly, the cost can easily reach $100 an hour or more. Now, for some aircraft, that's unavoidable. If you're flying a Pilatus PC-12 NGX, a Daher TBM 960, or something like a Cessna Citation Longitude, fuel is simply part of the equation. Those aircraft move fast, they travel far, and they burn fuel accordingly. But for the majority of general aviation pilots, there are ways to dramatically reduce fuel costs without giving up the joy of flying. And today, we're going to talk about exactly how to do that. Let's start with something many new pilots don't realize. Not all airplanes burn fuel at the same rate. In fact, the difference between aircraft can be enormous. Take a typical trainer, like the Cessna 150. That little airplane might burn about 5 gallons of fuel per hour. Even with today's fuel prices, that's relatively manageable. Now, compare that to something larger, like a Cessna 210 Centurion or a Beechcraft Bonanza G36. Those aircraft might burn 12 to 16 gallons per hour. Still reasonable for cross-country travel, but you can see how the numbers start to climb quickly. And if you step into faster aircraft like the Mooney M20U Ovation Ultra or the Cirrus SR-22, the fuel flow climbs even higher. But here's where things become interesting. Many pilots assume that flying faster always means burning more fuel. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes the opposite can happen. Take the Diamond DA-40 Star. This airplane was designed with efficiency in mind. Modern aerodynamics, lightweight structure, efficient engine management. The result is a cross-country aircraft that travels quickly while still maintaining relatively modest fuel consumption. Another example is the Pipistrel Virus SSW. If you've never looked into that aircraft, it's worth your attention. Extremely efficient, modern design, capable of cruising while burning only a fraction of the fuel many traditional aircraft require. For pilots who simply want to enjoy flying without draining their fuel budget, aircraft like that are becoming increasingly attractive. But before we talk about switching airplanes, let's discuss something simpler. How you fly matters just as much as what you fly. Many pilots unknowingly burn far more fuel than necessary. Climbing aggressively, cruising at maximum power, ignoring mixture settings. Small adjustments in technique can significantly reduce fuel consumption. Lean the mixture correctly, choose efficient cruise settings. Plan climbs and descents carefully. Over the course of hundreds of hours, those small habits can save thousands of dollars. Now let's pause for a moment, because I'm curious about something. If you own an airplane, or plan to own one someday, what do you think is the biggest ongoing cost? Fuel, maintenance, hangar fees, or insurance? Write your answer in the comments. Every pilot has a different experience, and it's fascinating to see what people consider the biggest challenge in aviation ownership. Now let's return to the aircraft themselves. One of the smartest ways pilots reduce fuel costs is by choosing aircraft designed for efficiency rather than speed. Aircraft like the Grumman AA-1 or the Piper Cherokee 140 160 Hawk have remained popular for decades for exactly this reason. They're simple, they're reliable, and they don't burn excessive amounts of fuel. For weekend flying, sightseeing, and short cross-country trips, they can be incredibly economical. Another category worth looking at is modern light aircraft. Machines like the Sling Tsi or Pipistrel Panthera represent a new generation of efficient design. Composite materials, streamlined aerodynamics, advanced engines. These aircraft prove that you don't need enormous fuel consumption to achieve impressive performance. Then there's the experimental and kit aircraft community. Aircraft like the Van's RV-10 or RAN's S-21 Outbound offer an interesting balance. Good performance, efficient fuel use, and often lower operating costs compared to certified aircraft of similar capability. Many pilots exploring affordable flying eventually discover that this community offers some of the best efficiency available in aviation. But perhaps the most surprising solution is something many experienced pilots rediscover later in life: slow flying. Aircraft like the Piper Cub J3 or Piper PA-18 Super Cub are not about speed, they're about experience. Low fuel burn, low stress, pure enjoyment of the sky, and the fuel savings can be dramatic. When you're burning just a few gallons per hour, suddenly flying becomes far more accessible. The same idea applies to backcountry aircraft. Planes like the Cubcrafters X-Cub, Kitfox Series 7, or just Aircraft Superstol. These aircraft aren't designed for high-speed travel across multiple states. They're designed for exploration, short flights, remote airstrips, adventure, and in many cases, they use significantly less fuel than larger cross-country machines. Of course, some pilots still want the ability to travel long distances efficiently. That's where aircraft like the Diamond DA62 or Tecnam P2006T become interesting. Twin-engine reliability, modern efficiency, and fuel burn that is often surprisingly reasonable for their class. Compared to older twin-engine aircraft like the Beechcraft Baron G58 or Piper Seneca Vive, these newer designs can offer significant improvements in fuel economy. But let's take this discussion even further. Imagine your ideal weekend flight. Would you rather burn 15 gallons per hour racing across the country in a Cessna TTX or Lancair 4P? Or cruise peacefully at lower speed while burning far less fuel in something like a Cessna 172 Skyhawk or Diamond DA40 Star? There's no right answer. It depends on what kind of flying you truly enjoy. Tell me your choice in the comments. Do you prefer speed or efficiency? Because at the end of the day, the goal of aviation isn't just getting somewhere fast. It's enjoying the journey. Some pilots discover that the most satisfying flights happen at lower speeds, watching rivers pass beneath the wings, exploring small airports, landing on quiet grass strips. Aircraft like the Aeropract A-22 Foxbat or Zenith CH-750 STOL make that kind of flying incredibly accessible. And when your fuel bill is dramatically lower, you can fly more often. There's also another important factor: time in the air. If fuel becomes too expensive, many pilots simply fly less. But if operating costs stay manageable, flying remains part of everyday life. That's one of the reasons aircraft like the Cessna 177 Cardinal, Piper Saratoga, or Socata TB-20 Trinidad continue to attract pilots who want practical travel without extreme fuel consumption. And of course, if someone truly wants performance without worrying about fuel costs, aviation offers extraordinary machines. Aircraft like the Epic E1000 GX, Piper M600 SLS, or Beechcraft King Air 360ER. Incredible speed, incredible capability, but also incredible fuel consumption. For many pilots, those aircraft are more about aspiration than practicality. Which brings us back to the original question: how do you stop burning $100 per hour on AvGas? You have three choices: fly more efficiently, choose aircraft designed for efficiency, or embrace slower, more relaxed flying. Each option can dramatically reduce costs, and each one can open the door to a different kind of aviation experience. So now I want to hear from you. If fuel prices doubled tomorrow, what airplane would you still choose to fly? Would it be a classic Cessna 172 Skyhawk, a modern efficient aircraft like the Diamond DA40 Star? Or something adventurous like the Icon A5 exploring lakes and coastlines? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes the airplane we choose says a lot about why we fly in the first place.